Hello and welcome back to the Purl podcast. It is lovely to have you here. My name is Sophie and this is the fourth time I have tried to film this podcast. It is very sunny outside and I usually film in the room over there. Our house is east-west facing and the lighting was either, if I closed the curtains, it was too dark to actually see anything, and if I had them open, it was too light to see anything. So I thought I would try in this room. It's a bit of a tip behind me, so yeah, but this is what we're going to be talking about today. So if you haven't watched my videos before or come across my content, I'm Sophie. Thank you for watching. And I am the knitter and designer behind the Knit Purl Girl. Yeah, it's really nice to have you here. Thank you for joining me. I would encourage you to pour yourself a glass of wine if you want to join me, or a cup of tea because we've got quite a lot to get through today. But it's about 4:30 on a Thursday as I film this. I've got a bit of pattern editing to do and I thought, do you know what? A glass of wine really wouldn't go amiss whilst I film this and talk to you guys. So yes, I don't have anything in particular to talk about in today's podcast. I just want to kind of have a nice little chilled hangout session with you. I've got quite a few new projects to talk about and some updates on some works in progress that I think you've already seen. But yes, it should be a fun one, so let's get into it. Oh, and I also have to warn you, I have just had the biggest hay fever episode that I've had so far this year. So if I'm a bit red-eyed and a bit manic, it's because of that. I've just spent the last half hour sneezing my face off. So yes, just to warn you. But anyway, so to start off with, the Saturday just gone, I released my Terni Slipover pattern. So this is what it looks like. I actually was wearing this in the second episode that I filmed, in this beautiful dark copper colour, which is just so vibrant and pretty. But I've also made a second sample, and this is the one that this is the one that the pattern is based off of. In this beautiful light beige, and as you can see, they are knitted in the most beautiful draper yarn. So this is actually the baby alpaca, also known as the baby wool, from We Are Knitters, which I realise is a bit I guess persona non grata, but brand at the moment for good reasons. So the pattern does have alternative yarns if you don't want to use a whack yarn. But yeah, I'm so pleased with it. It's a really simple construction, but I think it's got some nice details, if I may say so myself, that do just give the pattern a little bit of a neater fit. So for instance, there's a little bit of short row shaping at the back, so you do just get a slightly sloping shoulder, which I think is quite flattering. I just think it improves the fit. Also, I did not realise how many baby hairs I had until I was editing the footage of me in the mohair video. It was like, oh, move your baby hairs. Sorry, tangent. But yeah, so it's got the short rows at the back. It has a folded collar that is sewn down. It has, you pick up stitches for the collar and for the arm trim. And you finish it off with a tubular bind off, which is a type of sewn bind off that's quite stretchy. But basically, it just looks like, if I hold this up so you can see it, if I hide, yeah, it kind of just looks like the rib is continuing over the edge. So one of my cats is trying to come into this room. But yeah, it's a very fun stitch pattern to work. It's just all it is. Are you joining me? Can you see her? All it is knits and purls. So it's maybe not the most beginner friendly pattern, but it's not difficult. Yeah, so you're just doing a combination of garter stitch every now and then, stocking stitch, and 1x1 rib. So yeah, it's a nice combination of stitches, and you get this really pretty, almost architectural finish. I've named it after the Italian city of Terni. So I name all of my patterns after Italian cities because my PhD is in Italian history. So Jasmine just ran across and onto a chair that's here. She's not going to say hi. So yeah, I was keeping with my Italian theme. And yeah, I'm so pleased with this design. The test knitters have been absolutely amazing. Test knitters of the world, I always want to tip my hat off to you. You are good people. And yeah, I'm very happy to share this. There will be a link to the pattern on my website and Ravelry down below with a discount code, especially for YouTube. The details of that will all be in the description box below. But yeah, I made 2 sample garments because I think it's good practice. I think it's always good to have one to kind of get the idea out of your head and into reality, and another to just refine some of the concepts, and also to almost like test knit your own pattern. And this is something that my lovely friend Laura of Penrose Knits, I feel like we're like a little gang. Like we're just like cross-referencing each other all the time. It's like, oh god. I swear we're not cliquey, but I think we might be a cult. Sorry, I shouldn't joke about cults, it's serious, but I digress. But yeah, no, Laura was saying this the other day in her podcast, about how it's good practice to like almost test knit your own pattern. And that's exactly what I did with these 2. So in the first garment, I was making increases for the armholes every row. So there were right side and wrong side increases to shape the body. And it's okay, but it just means that and I quite like a deep slip over, but it does just mean that the armhole was quite deep. So I think it's not going to be as flattering for as many body types. And it also didn't give me as much wiggle room for the armhole depth that I think I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. I've got 10 sizes, I think, for this. So it didn't give me as much wiggle room for, yeah, getting the correct armhole depth. Whereas with this one, there are increases on every other row, and then for some sizes, increases on both sides. Just to make sure you do get enough stitches. But yeah, I'm so happy with how they turned out. I've worn these loads, as I'm sure you can tell, because they could do the deep hill. And yeah, like I said, I used the baby wool or baby alpaca from We Are Knitters. The rust shade was very kindly sent to me as PR, so I've got that in my stash behind me. So this is also a little stash tour in my stash behind me. And again, I totally realise why people may no longer want to shop from We Are Knitters. In case you missed it, they did a collaboration with Zara Man that was very poorly thought out, in my opinion, totally ill-conceived. And because it kind of goes in the face of all of their proclaimed slow fashion values to work with, you know, one of the most egregious fast fashion companies out there. But I digress. But yeah, I wrote quite a long blog post about this, and I'll leave it linked below. But I'm going to use what I've got in my stash and then see what they do next before I consider purchasing from them again. That's kind of my, in case you missed it, catch up of all the drama. But it's a shame because I love so many of their wools. Like, I think the baby wool is just beautiful. It's one of my favourite baby alpaca yarns. But my test knitters have used a few different options, so I will have alternatives in the pattern. But yeah, some of that was very kindly gifted to me by the WAC team. But yeah, it's a really nice wool. I think it wears pretty well. There's a little bit of pilling, but when you think how soft baby alpaca, so I'm trying to sit up straight. When you think how soft a baby alpaca fibre is, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think that's kind of to be expected. I'll come back to this later in this video, but I used to work for a premium high street retailer in the UK called Whistles. And you know, they sell cashmere jumpers for like £175, so it's very expensive. And we would have customers come in being like, my jumper is wearing so badly, it's pilled, this is awful. And yeah, there's nothing quite like explaining to somebody like, it's just the nature of the fabric, I'm afraid, it's going to happen. And it's kind of the same with this, but I think it's really worth it. I think the stitch definition is so nice, and I will have had cutaways of me modelling the garments, so you can kind of get an idea of what they look like on. But yeah, I hope that you like them if you make them, and if you do have any issues or you have any questions, just drop me an email. My email is always in the description box. But yes, very exciting stuff. And then that brings me to my first finished object. If I put my Vino down, the Terni sweater. So if you watch my mohair video, you'll already know that this is a finished object, but I thought I'd talk about it too. So this is what it looks like. I used Gartner number 3, which they call a DK weight yarn. For me, is very much, I mean, I used 6mm needles here, so it's like an Aran really. And it's lovely. Like, I'm so into how this looks. I think it's quite interesting. If I hold up the lighter version of the Slipover. Yes, I think it's very interesting to see how the stitch definition looks. A, on the 2 different needle sizes, So this is 6mm needles and this is 4.5. But also in the different yarns, like I think this is much more architectural and graphic, whereas I think in the baby alpaca, it's almost quite subtle. So I think that's quite cool, and it's something I really like playing with the same stitch pattern in different fibres. If you've seen any of my like Aosta designs, they are worked on a range of different yarns and I love them all equally. But I think some yarns do just really lend themselves to these kind of like more structural stitches and more structural knitting. But yeah, I'm so pleased with how this turned out. I put a little bit of elastic in the collar just because it was kind of standing upright and I needed it to come in a bit, so that's kind of why the collar is sitting as nicely as it is, if I may say so myself. And yeah, I'm so pleased with how this worked out. It's got a double raglan, so 2 stitches for the raglan, a little bit of short rows just to shape the neckline. The sleeves aren't totally straight, but they also aren't totally poofy. There's a decrease every, 8 rows or so, maybe a bit more than that. Within each pattern repeat, there's some decreases. And it's just straight through the body, so I think this is going to be like a nice unisex design. I think the main difference will be just adding length, just because in my experience, men's... God, can you hear that wind? In my experience, men's knitwear tends to need to be a bit longer, but my partner he's on the lanky side, so that might just be me. But yeah, I'm so pleased with how the Terni sweater worked out. I am going to make, speaking of making second samples, I am going to make a second one, I think, because I have some really beautiful... Actually, let me find it. So I have this really beautiful wool from Caithness Yarns that I picked up at the British Knitting and Stitching Show, and I think it's the same weight as the Gartner number 3, and it would be good I know that he ships worldwide, and I think it would be good to be able to offer just an alternative yarn, and it's quite rustic this, I'd say, even compared to the Gartner. It's very sheepy. But yeah, I think I bought basically I think it was a kilo of wool from him at the London... Oh my god, that wind is crazy. Can you hear that? But yes, I bought a kilo of wool from him at the London Knitting and Stitching Show, which I went to last year with my lovely friend Nina, who I will also get back to later in this podcast. And yeah, I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, and I think making a second sample of this, I think maybe a size down. I think I've made here size D, and I think I could actually probably do a size C based on my normal fit, so I accidentally made this with a buck ton of positive ease, and I think I probably could have done with a bit less. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to make another one. Oh my god, it's so windy. Seriously, it's so windy. I have a really bad feeling that all you're going to be able to hear in this podcast is like shh from the wind. Oh well, we'll see. It would only be the 5th time I've tried to refilm this. But yeah, I think that's going to be perfect for this project. So yeah, I think if I can make another sample over the summer, because you know that's what you really want to be working on when it's hot, is a really sheepy project. Yeah, I think that'll be good, because I think it's always good to refine ideas and try a different size, and I'm going to need to make quite a lot of knitting charts for this, I think, so it'll be good. Next up, let's stick with like the structural knitting, or strukturstrik. I'm so sorry if you're Danish, I've just like butchered your mother tongue, which I feel like is also a shared theme between like mine, Lizzie, Laura's podcasts, and then there's Caroline, who like is Danish, and yeah. Sorry, Caroline. But yeah, I have another project on my needles at the moment, and again, speaking of the Aosta knits, it's an Aosta cushion. So my lovely friend Meg of No Frills Knitting, she and I were having a little chat, and you know, she said, why not do a cushion cover? And I was like, yeah, why not do a cushion cover? So here we are. I'm using 2 strands of Plötulopi, which is an Icelandic wool from the brand Lopi. And again, if I reference my stash, when you think of Icelandic wool, you're probably more inclined to think of something like Plötulopi or Alfaslopi. My Icelandic is non-existent. But it's this kind of wool, and it's very rustic. It's almost crunchy. It's lovely, very warm, but not one for people with wool sensitivities. Now, Plötulopi is a lot softer. Is it? It definitely is softer. I don't know if I'd say it's a lot softer. But basically, I showed this in the first episode of this podcast that I filmed, but it's pretty much unspun. Well, it is unspun, and I think it was originally sold for spinners. And that means that you've got a very light, lofty fibre, but it also means that you can just, with very little force, break the strand. Now, Meg's method for fixing this is to lick it and just rub it back together, kind of like felting it. I haven't tried that actually. I've just been, because this is a cushion, it doesn't really matter if there are ends because I've got the insert to stick in, and I think I'm going to fix it with Kitchener stitch, so you don't actually ever change the pillowcase, but then I might also have an option for, I mean, it still doesn't matter because you would never see the wrong side. But yeah, I think I'll also have an option so that if you want to be able to change your pillow insert, you can. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's looking. So like all my Aosta designs, it's worked in Andalusian stitch all over, which gives you this really nice texture. It's a very swampy brown, which you know appeals to me. Actually, I'm not wearing brown today. Get me. But yeah, I'm holding 2 strands of the Plötulopi held together with 1 strand of Tilia by Vilcolana, which is one of my favourite kind of everyday mohairs. It's relatively affordable. It has a nice amount of fluff, but nothing too crazy. It's got a good blend of mohair and silk for me. I just really like it, and the colour matches really nicely for this. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm about halfway through. And actually, something I really like about this project is that you can take your yarn for it and store it in the project, so you also have a project bag. And I think I'm going to do another version that has a slightly flatter base so that you actually can have a knitted project bag, which I'm quite excited about. So yes, that's this. It's really nice to be working, grab my wine. It's really nice to be working on an Aosta design again because it's been a while since I knit anything Aosta. I think the last Aosta pattern that I released was the summer top, which I think I started working on, God, probably this time last year actually. And I've kind of moved on to different things since then because, you know, I love my Andalusian stitch, but there's a world of other stitches out there. But it's also a bit of a comfort blanket to me because it's just such a nice, easy, repetitive stitch. It's 3 rows of stocking stitch, 1 row of knit, 1 purl one, in case you didn't know. So it's very, you know, very beginner friendly. And obviously I've kind of built my brand, I guess, off the back of that stitch, so it's very comforting to me. And I actually think I'm going to use Plötulopi with a strand of mohair to make myself a new Aosta sweater when I have the time, so that's exciting. I really like the yarn combination. I think 2 strands plus a mohair is solid, so yes, my recommendation for you. I am slowly working my way through A, this glass of wine, and B, the pile of knitwear behind me. That was my idea here setting up, because I was like, this is quite messy over here, but I can like have something interesting-ish behind me. And I've also got my little sheep toy, because why can't a 27-year-old woman get herself a cuddly toy? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let's stick with the kind of unspun, very loose wool that I was talking about with Plötulopi. And let's talk about Nutiden, baby. So, if you haven't heard of Nutiden, it's very similar to the Plötulopi, but it's Swedish and it's slightly softer. That's the general perception. And they do very limited releases. They have a Patreon that you can follow that I will link below and that I'm actually going to sign up for myself. And it's lovely. It's Swedish wool, produced in Sweden, obviously, and as far as I'm aware, they focus on using a good mixture of like heritage breeds, so it's very cool, very interesting, and it's very process led and very fibre led, which I'm very into. I like wool that feels like wool. So I got some the other day, basically. It's the only new yarn that I really have to talk. It's snowing. What the hell? The weather today has been insane. We have had snow this morning, and then it was really sunny, and now it's snowing again. This is crazy. The UK in spring, so lovely. But yeah, so it goes on sale in quite limited quantities, and you can't like just get it when you want it. You can get it when it's available, which is a very interesting business model for me. To me. God, it's snowing quite heavily. But ironically, I got the shade Snow, which is this beautiful white shade. It's really pretty, and you get it in these plates of yarn. So I've already started knitting from this. But Jasmine got hold of one of them because she's a pain in the arse, that cat. But yeah, you just order it by grams. So I think you can order a 100 gram, 300 gram or 500 gram package. And then they send it to you in these big plates of yarn, which are very satisfying to knit from. But yeah, it's a very interesting company, and I've wanted to try it since my friend, again, talking about Laura again, see, we are in a cult. Yeah, when we were at Unravel Festival, Laura had a newly finished Nutiden like wrap, and as soon as I touched it, I was like, oh yeah, I've got to try and get my hands on some of that, and I have. So I am just making a very simple raglan sweater. I'm holding it with a strand of Sanders Garn Terni Silk Mohair because if you thought the Plötulopi looked delicate, the Nutiden is next level. Like, you just have to look at it for it to disintegrate. Like, I don't even want to show you because I think it would put a lot of people off. But like, it's just quite, yeah, yeah. But it is really worth it. So yeah, I'm holding it with a strand of mohair because I kind of want it as a security blanket. And I know some people might shout at me being like, no, what are you doing adding mohair to such a delicate fibre? Like, what are you playing at? But it's my project, so. But yeah, I'm just imagining a really simple creamy sweater, which I really love. And in the 1x1 rib, I have done a series of yarn overs just to break it up a bit. And I was initially planning on it being almost like a picot edge. I thought that could be quite pretty. But then actually, I really like how it looks like this, so I think I'm going to keep that up as a bit of like a motif through the design and maybe do something funky on the forearms. But I haven't really decided yet, and I was getting a bit frustrated by how easily the yarn broke when I was working on it. So I think I need a little bit of a break from it and to work on something a bit more hardy for a little while. But it's really lovely, and I do think that if you've been wanting to try Nutiden, it's worth it. It's worth the hype. It's not, I'm not going to say it's cheap because it isn't. But it isn't crazy expensive. I think even with shipping, the 300 gram parcel was about £40, which I don't think is terrible for like a very small business done on a very small scale the way that it is. I think that's pretty reasonable. I'm very happy to pay that. Obviously, that's a personal choice. I feel like I'm very aware that I'm very lucky to be able to do that, but yeah, it's really exciting. And then my lovely, lovely, lovely friend Nina, who I mentioned a minute ago, Nina Marie Designs, here on YouTube and Instagram. She came to visit me in Cambridge the other day because she's an angel and I love her. And she very, very, very kindly bought me a skein of, a plate of Plötulopi in this beautiful grey shade. So thank you, Nina. And it's so, so, so nice. So this feels a little bit softer than the Snow shade. And it's also a lot bigger, like the plate is huge, and she said that, so she's a member of their Patreon, and she said that they found, you know, the producers, that when they were preparing it, that this shade bloomed a lot, and I think it must be the variety of breeds that they used, or the dyeing process, I don't know, but it's gorgeous, and it feels so nice and warm and squidgy, and it's quite solid as well. Like, I accidentally left this out in our living room overnight the other day, and Jasmine, my pesky cat, didn't steal it, so it's, even though it's very sheepy, and she usually is a big one for sheepy yarns, so it's good stuff, you know, it's solid, even though it's delicate. So yes, that is my Nutiden, and that is my only new yarn at the moment. I am, here comes the girl, here's Jasmine, pesky creature that she is. Again, I go into this in my blog post about the We're Knitters situation. And I'm trying to be a more conscious consumer of yarn because, in case you can't tell by this, I have too much yarn. Like, there's no two ways about it. Like, I have more than I can use. Even though I kind of, you know, work as a knitwear designer, it's excessive. So I'm trying to limit my... If I see something I want to buy, I used to be like, well, I can justify that because I will make X, Y, Z with it. And you know what I usually do? I usually do follow up on a project if I've had the idea for it. But a lot of the time, especially if I'm shopping in person, I buy for the sake of buying, which is terrible. Like, I don't do that with fast fashion. I do it with food. But I don't do that with anything else in my life, so why do I do it with wool? It's not very good, not very good at all. But yeah, so I'm trying to be better basically, and not be so prone to hoarding yarn, because look at, like, yeah, I don't need to explain this. And also we're moving, yes, we're moving in August, so I need to, you know, be a bit more responsible and not have so much crap to have to take with me when we do move. So yeah, I want you to hold me accountable. If I buy anything, if I have anything new to show you, I need you to tell me off in the comments. And I know if I don't show you, you won't know, but you know, I'll show you if I do. So I want you to keep me on the bandwagon. But yeah, I kind of made an exception for the Nutiden because it was a bit of a special purchase, and I'd wanted to try it for so long, which I know is an excuse, I'm aware of that, but yes, I'm trying to be more responsible and not buy so much crap. Okay, so changing the subject quite dramatically, let's have an update on the V-neck saga. So I showed you in the second episode of my podcast my 2 V-neck sweaters that I've already made, but was not happy enough with to write into a pattern. So this is the first one, and as you can probably see, the V-neck is enormous. Like, it literally reaches pretty much the extremity of my shoulders. But yes, it's a very wide neckline, so this was a no-go. This one has slanting shoulders in the construction, so I hope you can see, like, there's a faux seam here where you work like a kind of, so it's got like a flat top and then at an angle, and then you pick up stitches along the shoulder seam. And I think I just made the shoulders too long maybe before I started shaping the V-neck, but I don't know. Ooh, did you just see Jasmine? Did she just fly in front of you? But yeah, so this one was a no-go because it kind of ends up sitting halfway down your back half the time. And then this one is one that I made with the, I can show you, with the Isia Eco Soft. And this one the idea was to make a very similar jumper to the pink one, but to just bring the shoulder seam forward so it actually sits on top of your shoulders, and it just doesn't fit very well. I think I made it a bit too small. The gauge swatch I made was exactly the same as the pink one, so it's very strange, but you know, my maths was all sound, it just didn't work out in practice, which, you know, it happens. It's still very wearable, but again, just not happy enough with it to make it into a pattern. So round 3 of my V-neck, and I think I did show you this in my second episode, is another one with knitting for Olive, double soft merino and soft silk mohair, which is probably one of my all-time favourite yarn combinations. I've got them both here in the shade Lead. The mohair is slightly darker than the double soft merino, but DSM has been discontinued, so it doesn't matter anyway. Don't fall over. There we go. And they kind of work out to this nice mid-toned, slightly warm grey. And with this one, I have done a completely different construction that yields a similar look. So I've got a faux saddle shoulder. So what this means is that you cast on a bit like you would for a V-neck cardigan. So you do all of the back, and then you do this little sleeve section, and then you have one stitch for the front where you begin your increases. And then you work increases on both sides along here to create the width that you need, but again, you're kind of creating shoulders that are slightly sloping. So yeah, if I sit up nice and straight, you can see that my shoulders aren't like coming out straight, they're coming out at a slight slope. So I think a slightly sloping shoulder gives you that really nice polished look. And then you work increases just to the sleeve section. So you start off making increases either side of like the saddle shoulder, and then you just make increases to the sleeve section, which gives you the same kind of clean look as a drop shoulder or a sloping shoulder sweater. So you can see it's kind of going straight down here. If you can't see this, I'll add in footage of me trying it on. But yeah, I think that this wants to be a dress. I asked Instagram the other day, and I think we're going to make it into a dress. So I'm marking my first sleeve, and I'm going to do both of the sleeves to check I've got enough yarn. But I ordered 8 skeins of the double soft merino, so I think I probably will. I don't think the sleeves will take more than 1.5 skeins each, so I should have like 2 left over after this. But yeah, I think this is going to be like a really nice sweater dress. It's quite a deep V, so it kind of comes down to here. And I'm going to elasticate the neckline just to make sure that it doesn't get too heavy and pull down too much. and I think that will reinforce it quite a lot. But yeah, I think it's going to be really, really useful for the winter. I don't have any knitted dresses, so it'll be something completely new in my wardrobe, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, I'm so much happier with the fit of this. Again, I'll have footage of me trying it on just so you can see what it looks like, but yeah, it's good. I've never designed a pattern that uses this construction method before, so it's a very new experience, which is exciting and good. It's always nice to learn. I don't know how easy it's going to be to grade, so I don't usually get my patterns professionally graded. I've done it once, maybe twice, and then I kind of got the hang of it, I think, I hope, after that, and so I grade my own patterns. But yeah, I've never done anything quite like this, so I might get this professionally done just so I've got like the reference. But yes, I think it'll be good. I'm very excited. I'm very pleased with how it's worked out so far. So, yeah. Sorry, I felt like I started speaking really quickly in that section there. I am trying to be more aware of my speed when I speak, because I know that I've had a few comments from people being like, you need to slow down, but I really can't. It's I'm not the most natural public speaker, so I don't realise I'm speaking too quickly until I stop talking and I take a breath and I'm like so I do apologise, but you can slow me down on YouTube. You can slow me down by like 2.25 if I am talking too quickly for you, just a heads up. But I'm sorry, I am trying. Anyway, next work in progress. Let's stick with these sloping shoulders and talk about the Sille Slipover from Petite Knit. So this is one of her patterns, and it happens to me every now and then that as soon as I see it, I know I'm going to make it. I had this with the zipper sweater, and I had this with the Aosta sweater. And yeah, they're great, and this is no exception. So I'm using a new to me wool that is technically, I probably should include this in the acquisition section, but I bought it just around the same time as when I filmed my last podcast. So yeah, it should be an acquisition really, shouldn't it? But this is Caroline's fault, so blame her. But this is from Woolly Knit, and it's their Blueface Leicester. 100%. Yeah, it's really nice. So if you have never worked with a BFL non-superwash yarn before, it's lovely. I really recommend it. But it almost has a silky feel to it. So even though it's a rustic yarn, it has a nice halo. It's a nice like mid-grey brown, and it's just really nice. This one has a really good twist to it. So it's a, yep, so it's a 4-ply yarn, but it's very tightly spun. So if I hide, hopefully you can see that. So it has a really interesting texture and really amazing stitch definition. I am very into this yarn. So this is what the Sille Slipover looks like before I've added the the arm trims and the collar. I've made this in the second size, in size small, because I do find that Petite Knit's patterns tend to be quite generous, and I think it's going to be about right. If anything, I think it might be a tiny bit too small, but I can always give it to Iris because she's smaller than me, and I would happily make another one of these. But I don't really want to get into it, but I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight at the moment because just because I don't want to. It's so difficult talking about these kinds of things. I can feel myself blushing, but I've gained a fair bit of weight since lockdown, and I would like to lose it just because my asthma is a lot better when I'm a bit healthier. And I know that weight and health don't necessarily equate to one another, but it's my body, so it's none of your business. But yeah, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight at the moment just because I feel better when I'm a bit healthier, and I'm not at my healthiest at the moment. That's the point I'm getting to. And I think part of that is losing a bit of weight. Anyway, so I'm thinking this can always be a project that if it's a tiny bit too tight for me now, hopefully in a couple of months it won't be that won't be the case. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's as with all slipovers, most slipovers, you start at the back and you work down to the underarm, and then you cut your yarn, you work one shoulder, then you work the other shoulder, and then you join, and then you work to your underarm, and then you join in the round, apply the collar, apply the armhole trims, and you're done. So I love slipovers. I think for a lot of people, socks or shawls are good palette cleanser projects For me it's slipovers, because it's all the fun of making a sweater without having to do the sleeves, so it's really great. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this. So this one is kind of like part of the strick trend, and it's got this really pretty zigzag design through it, broken up with some moss stitch or seed stitch, so it's really fun. I've loved working it. It's got charts, so it does kind of tell you what to do. I would say with the charts for this pattern, they're not the most beginner friendly, because they aren't, you aren't getting the complete thing. So for the Terni, I don't want to compare myself to Petite Knit, but I don't want to compare myself to Petite Knit because we are in different leagues. Like, she is, I worship at her feet. But for the Terni Slipover, I have made full charts for the front and back yoke of each size, just to make it as beginner friendly as possible. Whereas this, it has, it's only really charted up to the end of the front and back increases, and then you have to work out the pattern placement for the underarm increases by yourself, which is fine. Like, it's not overly difficult, but it would be hard if you were just learning. Like, I remember when I was learning to knit, and I tried making a chevron striped scarf, and figuring out, because I think when you're an experienced knitter, you don't, and I think also if you're a lifelong knitter, which I'm not, I learnt to knit in 2019 when I was about 24, 25. But I can remember not being able to see the difference between a purl and a knit stitch, which sounds crazy to me now, but I just couldn't, I hadn't learnt yet. That's something that comes with practice, and yeah, if you were a beginner, I think this would really throw you off. So just a heads up. I don't think it's the most beginner friendly pattern, but then I also don't think it's marketed as such. So, but it's a very fun project. I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the wool. I can't recommend it highly enough. And I also think it's on sale. I'll double check this and leave it below, but I want to say that it's 5 skeins for £15, which is such a bargain. Like, £3 a skein, yes please. It's so good. Yeah, so you're getting 102 metres per 50 grams? This feels like 50 grams. You're getting 102 metres per 50 grams, so I think this, I try it myself. I've literally had 1 glass of wine. Yeah, you're getting a really good value for money yarn there, I think. I can't recommend this highly enough. So yes, that's my Sille Slipover. I go through phases of doing this. I will have a, there's no other way to describe it than like a slightly manic episode where I will have a lot of creative energy that I don't want to channel into, honestly, anything productive. Like, I'm a PhD student, I should be working on my thesis. I just don't want to. And I will channel a lot of that anxiety and energy into my knitting. It's kind of why I knit so much, to be honest with you. Don't tell my supervisor. And yeah, it's not great, but it is what it is. And I'm kind of in one of those phases or episodes at the moment where I'm like avoiding reality by casting on new things. So it's really good. Really healthy way of coping with your anxiety. Anyway, let's talk about another project. So this is the Ankers sweater by Petite Knit, and I cast this on a few weeks ago, but I just totally forgot to talk about it in my last podcasts. So yeah, the Ankers sweater is, I think, one of Petite Knit's most famous designs. Did you just hear the cat flap? My god, they are vicious, those cats. But yeah, I think the Ankers sweater is one of Petite Knit's most famous designs. I've made one for myself. It was one of my first projects that I did in the round. And I've made one for one of the babies in my family, and that was a fun project, and now I'm making one for my boyfriend. So I've chosen this really beautiful forest green shade. So Chris, my partner, has very dark hair and quite pale skin. He makes me look tanned, so sorry Chris. This kind of shade really suits him, and it is so pretty. So I picked this up from No Frills Knitting. Before I picked up my Plötulopi. And it's called Celtic Green, and it is from Wathmill Yarns, which I think that Meg might get through Woolly Knit, but I'll double check that. And this is what it looks like. It is so pretty. It's I would describe it as a semi-rustic yarn. If you are used to your superwash merinos, you will not like this. if you are used to something like this woolly knit BFL, this is rough in comparison with this. In comparison with the Caithness yarns, it's about the same. It's a similar, you know, it feels like it's from a sheep. Personally, I love that. And if Chris doesn't, he will have to get used to it or wear a top underneath it, I don't care. But yeah, so it's really nice to revisit this pattern, and it's so nice to use this yarn. I feel like I've got a sneeze coming on. But yeah, this yarn has a very pretty yellow fleck through it, which I think works so beautifully with the rib design. So if you've never seen an Ankers sweater before, basically it's a circular yoke that has stripes of 1x1 rib through the yoke, and then a stocking stitch from the body and the sleeves. And it is a beautiful design. It's so clever. It's one of those designs that is so kind of simple in its concept that you just wish, like, oh god damn it, I wish I had that idea. Because it's so effective, and I think this is one of the most beginner friendly projects on the market, because it's a really good introduction to circular knitting. You learn, you know, none of the increases are complicated and decreases are complicated. You learn how to like work a project in the round, but you know, it's only stocking stitch or 1x1 rib, so it's pretty easy. So yeah, if you are a newer knitter looking to get in, so I've just realised I've got like mohair all over me. How on brand. By the way, do you recognise this? But yeah, if you're a beginner knitter looking to get into circular projects, I cannot recommend the Ankers sweater highly enough. It's amazing, and it's so wearable. It's such a stylish piece. I love it so much. I would actually really like to make myself another one, but again, it's just like having the time to do it. So I think that might be another PH done project. I am planning so intensively for what I'm going to knit when I'm done with my thesis, and yet I'm doing very little to actually, you know, do my thesis, which is very classic me. I can see past the thing that I need to do, I just can't actually bring myself to do the thing. Terrible. But yeah, I don't actually make my boyfriend that many projects. So he, like I say, he's tall, he's 6'4", and he's got a long torso, and I have a very short torso. So like, if I stand up, my hip is here and my underarm is here. So like, you know, if I'm working the body of something and I don't mind it being cropped, I only really need to knit 20 centimetres of a body and it looks okay. It doesn't look great, but it looks okay. Whereas with Chris, it's like, well, he's a foot taller than me. So you do the maths, and it's a nightmare. So I've made him an Aosta sweater, and I've made him one of my colour burst sweaters, and I've made him a Handsome sweater from Petite Knit as well. But his colour burst sweater was my first draft of that pattern, so there's a lot of issues with it. And then his Aosta sweater, I left the sleeves very full because he asked me to, so it's quite a statement piece. And then his Handsome sweater, I made, that was the first ever circular project I made. I think he's wearing it today, or I would show you. And I didn't yet understand how tension worked or how gauge worked, or that just because you could knit with a yarn on a given needle size didn't mean that you should. So we knit as the petite wool, which is thick. You know, it's thick. It's recommended needle size 8mm needles on 4.5mm needles. So I say this as a medieval historian. It feels like it could sit under armour and it would be okay. Like it's closer to felt in finish than a knitted piece of fabric. It's great in this house because it's Victorian and very badly built and very drafty. But for like, yeah, it's no air can pass through it. If you hold it up to a direct light source, I'm not kidding when I say you can't really see light through it. It's so dense. So yeah, this will be the first jumper of mine, well, of his that I've made that will be like wearable on like a day-to-day basis. So he's very excited. So I met with a friend for a coffee earlier and I was working on this, and yes, it'll be good. It'll be good. Next up, let's do a little update on the Terni Summer top, or cami. So I don't think I've shown you this, but I have posted about it on Instagram. And I've definitely spoken about the yarn because, again, this is what I picked up in the Knitting for Olive fundraiser for Ukraine sale, and it's their pure silk in the shade Dark Cognac, and this is one of my favourite yarns, especially for the summer. It's just stunning. It's a cruelty-free silk, so the silk moths, worms, whatever, that produce it aren't killed in the process of harvesting the silk from their cocoons. So you get this really pretty rustic finish. Like, can you see? It's very pretty, and I really like it. In case you can't tell, I'm quite partial to a rustic wool. And yeah, this silk is no exception. And I knew as soon as I kind of got to grips with my Terni stitch that I wanted to do a summer top. And I wanted to use Knitting for Olive pure silk. And I was initially, this looks like the smallest bikini in the world. I was initially imagining a cami. However, I don't really like wearing knitted camis anymore. I made quite a few of them in 2020 during lockdown because they are quick to make, they use nice yarns, they're very comfortable to use and are pretty beginner friendly, they frog easily, you know, there's a lot of benefits to them. However, I just don't really like wearing them. I am, for various reasons, I'm quite self-conscious about my bust and showing too much about my bust. I've got relatively big boobs for my size and for my frame. It just makes me feel very self-conscious. So in the summer I don't like stuff that is too cleavagey. And this, in case you can't tell, would be quite cleavagey. And I don't think I want to go there. So yeah, so I am thinking I'm actually going to frog this and make something a little bit closer to the Terni Slipover. So I'm thinking it will be like a thicker construction, so thicker shoulders, but maybe not quite as thick as this. Maybe something more like this, and a slightly scoopier neckline, but a similar fit and a similar drape. So I'm quite excited about this, but obviously it'll be on like I like a 3.5mm needle for Knitting for Olive pure silk. That just works. I think 'cause I'm quite a tight knitter, 3mm is just horrible. But 3.5 is good. It's got like a nice bit of stretch. It's just really lovely. Good stitch definition. So yeah, I think that's going to be really nice. So I think that might be my next new cast on. And actually, here on camera, I am going to take this off the needle. So I'm committing to it. But yeah, I think sometimes it's, you have an idea for a project or a new design. Oh my god, it's really snowing outside. Here I am talking about like silk tops for the summer. Okay, my camera is running out of battery, so I need to get a wiggle on. But my last project to show you is this one. So I mentioned earlier that I used to work for a shop called Whistles, and yeah, like I said, they specialise, well, no, I didn't really say, but they kind of specialised in knitwear. I feel like that's something that in the UK, if you're shopping at a shop like Whistles, if that's in your budget, then you might go there for knitwear. That was my experience as a shop assistant working there from 2014 to 2018. And I made the most of my staff uniform discount when I worked there, and I bought a lot of very good knitwear. It's kind of what got me into wanting to knit when I did, because I could no longer afford the nice knitwear that I had grown accustomed to, let's put it that way, because I wasn't going to drop £175 on a cashmere jumper, but with my staff uniform discount, yeah, I was. But for various reasons, I don't wear a lot of the jumpers that I bought on my uniform discount, just because, you know, your tastes change and whatever. But I've still got them. They're upstairs. They're sent in my like sentimental clothing drawer. But one of the jumpers I do still wear, and it's the only jumper I still wear that I didn't make myself, is this one. And it is a stripy sweater. It has a big old drop shoulder, so my neck is here, my elbow is here, and the drop shoulder is almost at my elbow. It's got a funnel neck, it's made with cotton, it is a very nice drapey fabric, and I want to make my own version of it. So I am. It's the magic of knitwear. You can think, I want to make this, and you can just do it. It's so cool to me. I've never gotten over it. So this is my progress so far. It doesn't look like much, but there's been a lot of knitting and thinking in this. So it does want to roll up a lot, so it's actually more like this. And if I put it on, it sits like this. So again, it's a very wide drop shoulder. So it's coming down to like my mid upper arm. And I'm using Sanders Garn. I'm just going to keep this on now. Sanders Garn Terni Silk Mohair and Sunday held together in the shades Sailor in the Dark, Whipped Cream, I can't remember. I think this might be Kit or Putty in the mohair. And I can't remember what the navy blue is. I think it might just be navy blue. But I got these at No Frills Knitting. Other retailers are available. But yeah, I'm so pleased with how it looks. So this is what the front looks like. So we've got the stripes going straight into the funnel neck. I have just done a regular cast off here to simulate the original design. And I don't usually endorse copying any kind of design, but this was released in 2018. It's fine. I'm using different construction methods. You should never copy from another knitwear designer. I don't think. I've had it happen to me. It's horrible. And I've also found myself accidentally copying a stitch. Well, not copying. I've accidentally used the same stitch as another designer. And if it happens, you just reach out to somebody and check what they're, are they okay with it? It's really horrible when it happens to you. It's really upsetting. But I digress. But yes, so I'm kind of using this as a reference, but using very different construction methods and obviously hand making it. But yeah, it just so happens that my gauge with this on 4mm needles is about the same as the original sweater, so that's quite handy. But yeah, I'm so happy with how it looks so far. I've used short rows to shape the yoke, and I finished this stripe off so it meets with duplicate stitch. I need to do it. Swoosh my hair out of the way. I need to do the same thing on this side because the stripes don't meet up yet. But I'm so pleased with it. I was playing around with it yesterday and yeah, I'm just thrilled. I love, love, love the kind of triangles you get with the stripes. It's so fun to me. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun to play with and fun. I've really enjoyed working on this. It's a nice challenge. And this is kind of what I mean when I say I have like slightly manic episodes where I've got a lot of energy that I should be, channeling into more useful things, and instead I'm like, can I recreate this? Yes, you can is the answer. But yeah, what do you think about like recreating designs that you see in the shops? I'd be very keen to hear like what the vibe is on that. But yes, I think this is going to be our project for this evening. I am very into Great British Menu at the moment, so I'm going to be watching the dessert course episode and working on this. And I think that's all the yarn I have to show you today. Oh, I'll show you what this looks like. Swatched up quickly. Very pretty, nice bit of fluff, nothing crazy. Love, love, love. Sanders Garden Sunday and Terni Silk Mohair, one of my favourite yarn combinations. But yes, my camera is about to die, so I will wrap things up here. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I'm really enjoying this podcasting stuff. I love writing about knitting, and I do also have a knitting newsletter that I've kind of been neglecting of late, just because it's very time consuming. But yeah, it's really nice to just have a chit chat and get into the nitty gritty with you. And yes, I want to thank you all for being so welcoming. I feel like the YouTube knitting community and the Instagram knitting community aren't quite the same. I think it's like a Venn diagram, but there are definitely different people. So yeah, thank you for being so welcoming. It's been really nice to be here. And yes, I hope that you are keeping well wherever you are in the world. And I'm going to get myself another glass of wine and edit this footage. So yes, have a great day and I will see you soon. Goodbye.